lesson 3 for George's Secret Key to the Universe, and the words we're looking for are menacing, ambling, inspiration, and accelerate. So we have a menacing on page 69, and that one is more towards the bottom. So we have a paragraph that starts, "When George reached the other side of the road, to his surprise, the crossing guard leaned her sign against a tree and stood there, glaring back at Ringo and his friends. The roar of the traffic started up again, and as George sped away, he heard another menacing shout. 'Hey, we gotta get across. We need to get home and do our schoolwork. If you don't let us cross, I'll tell my mother and she'll come and straighten you out.'" Alright, so I think that possibly reading through it, we can get an idea, because I go back up just before that paragraph and it says, "Don't let those nasty boys catch you," and then we're hearing another menacing shout. So we can kind of get an idea of what menacing means just from what's happened so far in the chapter. And then on the same page we have ambling, and ambling is right up here. So it says, "Scurrying forward, he joined the moms and babies, managing to insert himself into their midst so that he was surrounded by strollers. Ambling across the road while the crossing guard held up her bright yellow sign, George tried to look as though he belonged to one of the mother and baby groups." So ambling is some sort of movement, and if you can't get it from what's right around it, then I would look that one up in the dictionary. And then we have inspiration on page 70. "George tried a few of the doors and the fences, but they were all firmly locked. He looked around in a panic and then had a flash of inspiration. Grabbing onto the lowest bough of an overhanging apple tree, he hoisted himself up high enough to gain a foothold on the top of the fence and leaped right over it." Okay, so he was panicked, and then all of a sudden he figured something out. He had a flash of inspiration. All right, and then on page 86 we have the word accelerate. Right here at the bottom of page 86. It says, "Please, my wonderful cosmos, when we're out there on the comet, can you accelerate the journey? Otherwise, it will take us months to see the planets." Okay, so if we don't accelerate, it's going to take us a really long time, months, to see the planets. So then we can sort of understand what accelerate means from the next sentence that we read. All right, and then for the writing prompt, it says, "Choose the most effective sensory description or figurative language from chapter 7. And we have talked about figurative language. So we're talking about imagery, which is a lot of description. We're talking about similes and metaphors and idioms, maybe onomatopoeia, maybe hyperbole. And you may have to look some of those up so that you can jog your memory on what they are. I am going to go back to some of the description at the beginning of chapter 7. So I'm going to read here where it says, "The way home from school was long and hot. The unexpected heat of the early autumn sun was beating down on the asphalt, turning it soft and squishy under George's feet." So just that sentence there, and I know that a lot of you will know what this is, but we have the early autumn sun was beating down on the asphalt. So we have a type of figurative language there. And then we have a really great description, turning it soft and squishy under George's feet. And that helps us to understand how it was feeling to him. "He trudged along the pavement while big cars whizzed past him," and there you have another example of figurative language, "leaving smelly fumes behind them as they went. In some of these enormous, shiny monsters sat the smug kids from school." So I know that we're not talking about enormous, shiny monsters, and that the kids were not sitting in these shiny monsters, but what were they sitting in? And so what type of figurative language is that right there? Watching DVDs in the back seat as their parents drove them home. Some of them made faces at George as they drove past, jeering at him for having to walk. Others waved happily, as though he would somehow be pleased to see them as they shot off into the distance in their vast gas guzzlers. No one ever stopped and offered him a lift. So we have so much going on in this first paragraph here as far as figurative language and description, and it gives us a very good picture of what's going on to start this chapter. So again, for your writing prompt, and you don't have to choose that example, but in the chapter or in this lesson, you're going to choose the most effective sensory description or figurative language. Then you're going to use details from the text to describe why the language is so effective. So you have to figure out which section you want to use, and you can use the one I just described, and you have to use those details and explain what makes it so effective. And you need to do this in 5 to 7 good 5th grade level sentences.